One of the, I gotta say, one of the most generous and friendly ways of doing an early access I've ever encountered is probably Don't Starve Together, because it's, all right, the whole way that you're bringing it out is very sort of friendly to the players, because everyone who owns Don't Starve will get a copy of Don't Starve Together once it's out of early access. Early access is purely for those who want to get in there early, and they get also an extra key for their friends. Really nice setup. Can you tell us a little bit about Don't Starve Together? First of all, just give us what is it?
Sure thing. So Don't Starve Together is our standalone expansion for Don't Starve. So if you've played Don't Starve, it really is by and large the same game. It is a wilderness survival game with a procedurally generated world and permadeath. Although, because it's a cooperative game, well, mostly a cooperative game, it does not strictly. If you die, you now turn into a ghost, and your friends have a chance to kind of resurrect you. So it's only when the entire group dies that you truly fail and the world gets wiped and you have to start again. But it is that same sort of hardcore wilderness survival gameplay where you're exploring and gathering resources and trying to establish a base and survive for as long as you can. And we found that it actually scales really naturally to larger groups of to multiple players, because though you're able to get more done faster, there's more mouths to feed, and you need like 4 sets of armor instead of just 1. So the resource drain kind of balances out with the amount of work that you're able to get done. And we are actually adding some stuff to Don't Starve Together to kind of make it a better multiplayer experience. So, for example, when you do a hunt, now there's a new creature that you can find that if you don't have a buddy with you, you're going to have a bad time. It's probably going to get you. For now, we're still focused on the early access period, kind of building out the Don't Starve Together experience and making sure that everything from Don't Starve is there and kind of rebalanced for multiplayer. But pretty soon we're going to get to a point where we're actually adding more and more content specific to multiplayer and kind of increasing the scope of that multiplayer experience.
So has it been interesting to see like how people react to this, how people behave in this world? And have you been I mean, I guess you've been watching streams and every chance you have to see just how players interact with this, and if they spread out or if they band together or if they compete with things, or you know.
Yeah, it's been super interesting. Like I've been watching a ton of YouTube Let's Plays and Twitch streams, and even from day one when like we only had like the most rudimentary version of Don't Starve implemented and networked for multiplayer, just the presence of other players really does change the game. Like that social dynamic. I mean, it like we have a couple of different game modes. One of them is like for small groups playing cooperatively, and that mostly plays out like Don't Starve. Like people do cooperate, but then we have a mode called Wilderness, which is more like the experience you see in DayZ, where you kind of spawn by yourself and you're roaming around the world doing your thing, trying to survive, and you happen across someone else, and you don't know if they're going to be friendly or if they're going to be aggressive, and it's kind of this moment of tension when you don't know what's going to happen, and that like the social dynamics there are really interesting.
I mean, this is something that was requested very early on when you began with Don't Starve. People is like, I want to play this in multiplayer. Does it feel, because you've done so much with Don't Starve. You started with a small game, you expanded that, then you got Reign of Giants, and now Don't Starve Together. Like, how's the journey been like with this game?
It's been so exciting to watch it grow. I actually only joined Klei about 1.5 years ago, so my first project was Reign of Giants, and it was really exciting to like take Don't Starve, which was this great, robust, complete game, and just make it bigger, make it more complete, and like more challenging, and then so the way we do things at Klei, we like to focus on things basically like one at a time. So for a while it was, we need to make Don't Starve the best single player game we possibly can. And that was why we weren't doing multiplayer at that time. It was never like, no, never. It was more of, it doesn't really make sense for us to do it right now because we are a small team. I mean, I think right now the Don't Starve Together team is about 15 people, and that's the biggest the Don't Starve team or Don't Starve Together team has ever been. So it was only once we kind of got Don't Starve to a point where we were really, really happy with the single-player experience it offered, that we were able to say, okay, well, now we feel like we can dedicate it some people's time to kind of figuring out the obstacles that are in the way of making a multiplayer experience, and then like kind of rebalancing it and making it the best multiplayer experience we possibly can.
One of the things about Don't Starve is it's the joy of exploration, the joy of finding something and then trying to figure out what it means or what you do, unless you sort of go to the YouTube and things like that and check it out, yeah. I guess. But that's one of the things. So I don't want to ask you too much about sort of the unique flavors that you're adding to Don't Starve Together, because that would sort of spoil the experience. But is there anything you can say without spoiling too much, that, you know, any tease or inkling?
So the hunt creature I mentioned before is one of the things that we've added that we're really excited about. And then I mentioned like the sort of ghost state before. And when you're a ghost, so that you have something to do, almost everything in the world you can haunt. And everything in the world has a different reaction to being haunted, and sometimes it's neutral, sometimes it's actually beneficial, sometimes it's catastrophically bad. So it's something you'll just have to kind of experiment with and figure out as you play, and probably some things will go horribly wrong in the process. But that's the best moments in Don't Starve, when these high drama mistakes or like confluence of systems that just kind of come together to really screw you over.
That's one of the things that I loved about the game, because it sort of kind of rewards stupidity, if you will, because that's when you have the best experience, when you do something, oh, that was probably not too smart.
Yeah, you do have, like, my favorite part of Don't Starve is that period when you're relatively new and you're coming across things you don't recognize, and you're like, you have to be a little bit sporting about it rather than be like, oh, I don't recognize that. I'm gonna run this way. I find it's way more fun to be like, I don't recognize that. Let's poke it, see what happens, because that's also how you get more information and become better prepared to succeed the next time. I think it's such an important aspect to why Don't Starve is an interesting experience.
So obviously you got it on Steam Early Access. You're building up to a full release there. Do you plan to bring it out on PlayStation as well?
We absolutely hope so. There are a couple technical hurdles we have to figure out before we know if it's really possible, mostly like performance and server architecture type stuff. But it's definitely something we're looking at and would love to do.
Would then be an upgrade or expansion to that game, or how do you?
So that's the third thing we would have to figure out. So like the sort of rules about how you can distribute content are different on different platforms. So we can do all the cool early access stuff you were talking about earlier on Steam, but we're not sure if we're able to do that same kind of thing on like Sony's platform. And then there's the question of like, are we comfortable doing it differently? Is that fair to the players on PlayStation? So we'll have to figure that out as well.
So is there a chance to hot join a game in progress with your friends or in co-op?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, that's the only way you can do it. I mean, when you're playing with friends, like you'll tend to say like, okay, I'm going to start the game, everyone join now. But like, you can put up a dedicated server that is cooperative, that survival mode, and like, I can join and play for a couple hours, and maybe halfway through my session you can join and play for a couple hours and then log off, and we'll both come back the next day, and our characters will still be there, unless like the whole group has died in the process. So it is drop in, drop out, and we're hoping that at some point soon we'll be able to add like sort of a lobby system where you can kind of queue up and all start together. But for now, everything is drop in, drop out.
Thanks a lot.